Hello, everyone. Welcome to Conversations with Sekani, a podcast for people in their 20s who are trying to figure out life and not get lost along the way. Today's guest is Norman Wolfe, founder and CEO of Quantum Leaders and the creator of the Living Organization Framework. With more than 40 years of leadership experience spanning 500 Fortune companies and high growth startups. Norman has helped organizations bridge the gap between strategy and execution by challenging one of the biggest assumptions in business that organizations are machines to be managed. Instead, he believes organizations are living systems that grow, evolve, and thrive when people find shared meaning and purpose. His idea has helped leaders rethink culture, leadership, and what it truly takes to build organizations where both people and performance flourish. Norman, welcome to Conversations with Sekani. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Sekani. It is an honor to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
All right. So, yes, Norman, I want you to take us back, right, to your 20s, basically. What kind of person were you in your 20s and what ambitions were driving you at that stage of your life?
My 20s, huh? Wow. That's a number of years ago. In my 20s, I was a typical, just out of university, looking to start my career in the business world, right? To be
Mm.
successful. Um, I was just gotten married to my first wife. That's a long story. But and I had my first job opportunity for Pratt Whitney aircraft. I was a systems engineer, systems analyst, programmer. Worked with um, basically I was responsible for the test and data acquisition system, testing fuel cell technologies. So that was my start, and then after about 4 years, I moved on to work for Hewlett-Packard. I was a man who was both eager to be successful, but also very curious about how life worked. I guess in my 20s, I began to develop this idea of, um, or curiosity about how do I create the results I create, and how can I get more of what I want and less of what I don't want, right? So,
Mm.
a typical 20-year-old married. I think my first child came about when we were 30. And my first divorce came about when I was 32. So that was my 20s.
Wow. Okay. So thank you, Norman, for sharing your story with us, actually. Every successful journey, right? It includes some setbacks, I think. So was there a moment in your life that you felt like you encountered some form of setback?
Uh, yes.
Mm.
Again, in my 20s, um, I was very successful in the technical arena as a systems engineer working for Hewlett-Packard. I was very highly recognized, one of the top individuals in all of the four sales regions throughout the United States. And I was given the opportunity to move into management, to manage the service district. And so I thought that was wonderful recognition. And I was very curious and interested in management. My first performance review, 1 year after my entering that role, I received a performance review that was unacceptable in every category. And so I had a choice to make. And I remember very distinctly actually, it was the region general manager, took me out to lunch and he gave me some advice that was very, very useful. He said, Norman, if you went to the Harvard MBA program, they would tell you that go out and fail twice before you're 30. because it produces the resilience you need to face all of the future setbacks you would have. If you're successful all the ways up to your 50, and then you get a major setback, you will not have the resilience you need. You would, and that advice really, really meant a lot to me, and really, said, okay, this is a challenge. I'm young. I can come back from it, and it set me on a path that pretty much led me to today. So, yeah, major setback very early in my life. Second setback also early. I got divorced when I was 32 from my first wife. Major conflict through the divorce situation. Another major setback taught me a lot. So, yeah, setbacks are often, I'll give the same advice my mentor gave me. If you're young, use your setbacks to help create the resilience to bounce back no matter what life throws your way.
Okay. Thank you, Norman, actually, for sharing your story, right? So openly and also, should I say, vulnerable, right? I really do appreciate that, actually. And I love that you give us an advice, right? Because that's the sole purpose of my podcast, receiving advice, right? And like you said, use your setback as a form of, resilience to always bounce back, no matter what life throws at you. So, and I remember someone told me, like, failure isn't actually failure, it's a life lesson, right? So these are lessons, and we are meant to just learn and become better people, right? So thank you, Norman. And yes, I want us to dive into your work, right? So your work challenges the idea that organizations are machines, right? And it suggests that they are actually living entities. So what
That's,
inspired that shift in thinking?
well, a number of things throughout my life. Certainly my early career, the things I mentioned to you, failing at leadership made me really look at what does it mean to help an organization, a group of people who come together for a common purpose. What really drives them to actually perform well? Um, Certainly you have individuals within the group, but you also have the group itself as a whole. And and as I, without really having a framework or an understanding, I found over the course of my career, both within Hewlett-Packard and then when I left them in 1988 and started the consulting, so I began to work with lots of different organizations. I noticed each organization had their own, you might call it their own personality.
Mm,
Um, in the early 2000s, I began to rethink my consulting practice and focus really on this area of executing strategies. And I was making very explicit that my work was about helping a group of people, whether it's a company or a department like a sales department or a finance department or a product development department within the company, helping that group of people become more effective at achieving their goals. We call it executing strategy, whether it's a department strategy or a company strategy, it doesn't really matter. As I got as I began to focus on that, I also discovered very quickly that statistically, 70% of companies fail to execute the strategy.
mm,
On the average, the statistics range from like 62% to 93%, but 70 is a good round number. Um, and that got me really curious because I'm a student of organization performance. I'm a student of business. I'm a student of leadership. And I've been um, exposed to so many ideas. I mean, if you look behind me, my bookshelf is filled with books on. Right. And everybody knows Jim Collins, Daniel Pink, Tom, um, what's his name? I can't think of his name all of a sudden. Anyway, we're inundated with wisdom coming from previous CEOs and what worked for them, academics who have done research, companies who have experimented with better ways of operating, and yet we're still stuck at 70%. Why, after 4 decades of wisdom, has nothing changed? And I remember some of my early training by Joel Barker on the concept of paradigms. The framework by which we look at life defines the way we approach the challenges we face. It defines the questions we ask, and the questions we ask produce the answers we get. That's the nature of a paradigm. We're kind of stuck in a bubble of how we think, right? And growth and maturity really often comes by thinking through a different lens, to not get stuck in the way we think, but to expand it to view other things. So I began to dive into, what is the underlying pattern of beliefs that we all have about what business is, and that's when I discovered that, and I'm not the only one to have uh, articulated this. We think of business as a simple black box, right? You got this box, it takes inputs and reduces outputs. And let's start with that simple understanding. And the goal of business is to convert those inputs through some process inside the box to produce outputs that customers want and find valuable. It's very simple and actually quite useful way to think about it, up to a point. And what that means is the leadership of the organization is responsible for designing the machine, and people inside the machine are really just components. Uh, that allows us to be highly efficient, but not highly resilient, not highly creative, not very innovative, because all of those attributes are contrary to efficiency. Efficiency strives to eliminate variabilities. So that's great if the world is fairly consistent and you can manage all the variabilities and minimize them so you have a very nice, efficient flow of processes. That's wonderful. But when things become changing quickly, basically the world we live in today, that is a highly ineffective because every change means you got to redesign the machine. And that's not very fast. And every change means you got people who have to adapt quickly. But if people are used to being told what to do, to be guided into this is what your role is, these are your responsibilities, this is how you are determined to be successful, they learn not to deviate very much. They hold to what they know because that's how they're successful. So you lose all resilience, you lose all adaptability, and we need more of that, not less of that. So I went back to, okay, that's the existing paradigm, and that's not working very well. So what would replace it? And that's when I began to explore this notion that, well, what if we thought of an organization as a person? I said earlier that my experience guided me to view organizations as people. They had personalities. Every company I worked with seemed to have a different persona. It was like I was talking to not just the CEO, but the whole company operated through this collective belief system, this collective narratives of who we are and what we believe in and how we behave and how we respond. I said, well, wow, that's just like the way a person thinks, right? That's when I coach people, that's what I'm dealing with. What do you believe? What do you want to do? What gets in your way? What are your limiting beliefs? How do you change that and all that? So the living organization framework is really taking the notion of how do we make a person more effective at getting what they want, to apply that to an organization. If you assume the organization's like a person, then it's a logical path forward. And so I created the living organization framework under the principles that the organization is a person, and that the best way to get that person to achieve the goals of the collective, that you treat the collective as if it's a person, and you work to develop not only its capability but its maturity. And maturity really has a lot to do with where we become resilient, adaptable, creative, innovative. Um, all those things we talk about when a person matures applies directly to an organization. That's the underlying premises of what I created.
Hmm. Wow. All right. The living organization framework. Good.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. So in your experience, right, what do you think is like the biggest misconception that leaders have about, motivating people?
Well, typically when we think of motivating people in the old paradigm, it really stems from external, extrinsic motivation. I tell you how you're going to be successful, and that's going to motivate you to want to be successful. So typically that comes to setting your goals, you know, telling you basically, I mean, we may negotiate it, but it's basically telling you what you want to. It never gets into what's important to you. Who are you as a person? Who are you as a collective of people? And what's important to you? And how do we match what's important to you to the needs of the organization? So, in the traditional view, and the reason motivations never worked, whether you call them bonuses or incentive plans or performance reviews or any of that stuff, if the person isn't truly aligned with what they want for themselves, intrinsically motivated, you'll never really get motivated people. I use the term we get compliance, but not ownership. And what we really need is people who are owning the success of the company as a pathway to their own success. Right now, the success of the company is primary, independent of the individual success. And by success, I mean what do they want in their lives? Not success as to you're a good component and you're producing these results. So until you get to that level of connection with the people, you just can't get the kind of motivation you want. Stop treating people like component parts of the machine and start treating them like human beings.
Yes, exactly. Right, exactly. And young professionals today, right, they often think leadership is about having all the answers, right? So how has your definition of leadership, should I say, changed over the years, basically?
Wow. Well, I was raised in terms of leadership very much like everybody else. So all the things I'm talking about that didn't work is what I was trained in. Um, so many of my attributes or thinking about leadership has evolved a lot over the years. So I've gone through all of it. I've gone through figuring out how to develop better plans. Figured out how to develop better ways to hold people accountable. I figured out better ways to establish better incentives and external motivation plans. I went through all of that and thought I was doing a good job. Um, Even recently, as I've been working with clients and implementing the living organization framework, which has a very intrinsic orientation, I kept finding myself being drawn into an extrinsic orientation. Um, and it's a constant learning. I would say the biggest change is when I began to look at organizations as in collectives, whether it's an organization or a department within the organization. um, I began to see them as living entities, as people, and that has changed. So I engage them with the same, shall I say, love and compassion and concern for their well-being as I do any individual I talk to or work with. And I work to align the collective's wants and needs to that of the organization so that the collective is consciously choosing to want to contribute to the organization in the way that the organization needs for its success. It's trying to match what I call the individual and the collective, whether the individual is a subset, like a department, and the collective, or an individual is an individual within the department. I'm trying to match the connection so that the individual and the collective it's part of are working in harmony with each other. So it's completely changed my whole view of what an organization is and how to deal with it.
Wow. All right. So thank you, Norman. And I would like to say this has actually been, deeply insightful, right? And yeah, the purpose of my podcast, right, is to give advice to the young ones, right? So let's say for people in their 20s listening to our conversation today, what is that one important advice you would want to give out to them that, would help live a better life, basically?
I would say this very same lesson that I learned in my 20s the hard way. Um, embrace, be very confident about who you are, but don't hold tight to that sense of who you are. Allow yourself to evolve and change over time. Use the challenges you face, the conflicts, the failures, if you want to look at it that way. And like you, I don't think of failure as a failure. It's just a challenge or an opportunity to rethink who I think I am and reframe myself so I can be more effective in the world I live in. Um, don't ever look to the world to change. Look to yourself to change. It would be the best advice I can give anybody.
Wow. All right. Like you said, don't ever look to the world to change. Look to yourself to change. Wow. All right. So that one, should I say it sticks with me actually, something I would actually practice from today. And yes, it brings me to the final segment of my podcast. I call it the rapid fire segment. You could
Okay,
either
I'm holding on. I'm ready to go.
all right. So you could answer with a word or a phrase starting now. So what is one word that describes your 20s?
Um, overly confident.
Wow. Okay. All right.
I was,
So what is okay, you were gonna say something.
I was going to say, I said overly confident. It's more cockiness than confidence. But yeah,
All right. Okay. So what is every book every young reader should read?
oh, well, um, Stranger in a Strange Land
Hmm.
by Robert Heinlein was a very important book for me.
Stranger in a Strange Land. Oh, okay. So are you a morning person or a night owl?
Morning person.
Hmm. Okay.
I,
So what is
yeah, which
sorry.
changed. I was a night owl when I was younger. Now I'm a morning
Oh,
person.
okay, hopefully. I mean, when I grow older too, I'll become a morning person. For now, I'm a night person, right?
Yeah.
So, what is a leadership habit you never compromise on?
What's I'm sorry, what was
A
the first
leadership, right? A leadership habit you never compromise on.
love
Mhm. Okay. And finally, what is one quality every great leader must have?
compassion?
Right. Ooh, okay, so yes, thank you, Norman. I would like to say the rapid fire was amazing. You did well.
Yeah.
All right. And yes, before you go, Norman, where can listeners get to, learn more about you and connect with you?
Uh, my website is quantumleaders.com. They can learn about the Living Organization more on the livingorganization.com website. And you can always reach me at my email is nwolfe at quantumleaders.com. And you can also find me on LinkedIn.
Oh, all right. And I'll put a link in the show notes, right? So it's easily accessible for listeners.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
And yes, to my listeners, I want to say thanks for tuning in to Conversations with Sekani. If this episode sparked something in you, just as it did in me, make sure to share to someone who you think might need this and also subscribe so you don't miss out on new episodes. Once again, thank you, Norman. It's been a pleasure having you on, and do have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Sekani. It's been a pleasure, and I loved your rapid fire. That was very stimulating.
All right, thank you. Take care.
You too. Bye now.
Yeah.